Let's get more on the free trade negotiations between Australia and the UK. The Prime Minister, Scott Morrison, got together with his counterpart Boris Johnson for a virtual announcement last night with some interesting comments about some of the items traded between the two countries.
We export all kinds of things, including, I was amazed to discover boomerangs made in the UK, exported to Australia. I don't think they come back, but we send them to Australia.
Well, Australia's Trade and Tourism Minister Simon Birmingham joins us now from Canberra. Minister, good morning. He wasn't the only one amazed. We're all a bit curious about this. Do we really import boomerangs?
Lisa, what I'm told, and I haven't been able to see one yet, is that they are not Indigenous artefacts, but they're actually some toy that's called a boomerang. So it's not what people may think when they see the video, and I'll certainly be trying to go out and see if I can find one just to check it out.
Yeah, please do. Let us know. Now, look, we know that they very much like our wine. The British Prime Minister is also a bit excited about Tim Tams, but clearly a free trade agreement is going to be about much more than that.
Well, it certainly is. You know, the opportunities for Australia are immense. The UK is a market of 67 million people. We want to see for farmers that they get a fair crack at this. So for grain growers, sheep graziers, winemakers, horticultural producers, we see real opportunities for them. But also in the services sector, huge potential there. We already have large healthcare providers operating in the UK. We want to enhance their ability through working at regulatory harmonisation, making sure we have mutual recognition of standards and of qualifications where we can. Yeah. That can help us in financial services, fintech, a whole range of areas.
Yeah, and look, when this was first started, and I was reporting in the UK when it was first touted, that lots of talk about the free movement of people. People were hoping that there'd be this visa-less travel between the UK and Australia, but at the moment it appears all that's being talked about is a bit of a tinkering with the youth mobility visa.
Look, it's a trade deal first and foremost. It's not some open borders arrangement, and it won't be an open borders arrangement. There will absolutely be opportunity, though, for us to look at how we can, as I say, harmonise mutual recognition of qualifications in areas where we have similar high standards that enable Australians and Brits to travel hopefully more freely with more ease in terms of working in the professions, working in different fields, and facilitating that rite of passage that so many young Australians and young Brits undertake in terms of travelling to each other's countries and working in each other's countries.
So you want to make that easier? You want to make it easier?
We definitely see opportunities to make that easier, but first and foremost, it's an agreement about jobs and creating more job opportunities to the mutual benefit of both countries by enhancing trade in areas of our expertise.
You gave us the bad news yesterday that most people were expecting anyway, overseas travel off the agenda until 2021. But what is going to be the decider when those international borders can reopen? Because the tourism industry is bleeding every day.
My heart breaks for so many tourism operators around Australia at present, and we know that they were in many ways the first into this crisis and faced the bushfires at the start of the year. And yes, the international border restrictions have been so incredibly important in Australia avoiding the scenes of mass graves in New York or overflowing hospitals in Europe that we've seen around the rest of the world. And that's why they're going to have to stay in place for some period of time to keep protecting us from the spread of COVID and to ensure we don't have...
So what's the decider then to reopen them? Is it waiting for a vaccine?
Well, a vaccine would be an amazing breakthrough, and that could be the game changer in terms of timing. Otherwise, we're going to just work very, very carefully through our discussions with New Zealand, through work to see how we can bring international students or long-stay visitors back to Australia under terms where they have to do the mandatory quarantine for 14 days to keep Australians safe. These are difficult decisions, and it's also why we want to really see states and territories take down their state borders, because Australians historically spend $20 billion more on travel outside of Australia than international visitors coming to Australia do spend. So it's a huge opportunity for us to backfill support into our tourism industry if Australians who can afford to do so get out there and enjoy some of the remarkable experiences our country has to offer.
We're learning today the cost of quarantine in New South Wales alone has been $50 million, putting people up in hotels. Epidemiologist Mary Louise McLaws says Australia needs a long-term plan. If we're going to start opening those international borders at some stage, we need to be able to quarantine people. What is the plan?
So that's why we're working through a pilot program in relation to international students. Now, it won't be taxpayers picking up the bill for those students in terms of their quarantine period, but we're going to prove that up. It's not just complications of how you run quarantine, it's also questions if you look at a green lane or an open bubble with New Zealand, how do we make sure that those flights coming in and out of international airports from New Zealand aren't, if you like, crossing over with flights coming from other parts of the world where COVID is more prevalent, because we want to make sure we protect those travellers going to and from New Zealand. So there are a lot of things we are working on in the background as to how we run the logistics to keep Australians safe, but reopen our economic activity wherever we can to be able to save jobs across the economy.
Minister, the text messages that have been released today from alleging to be from Anthony Byrne, lots of people online this morning saying that any other workplace that'd be a sackable offence. Do we hold politicians to a lower standard?
Well, I think there's a lot of public scrutiny that comes on politicians, but what we've seen in this week has been completely unacceptable. It is effectively endemic corruption within the Victorian branch of the Australian Labor Party that's been on show in terms of those branch stacking and other exercises there. And it's very similar practices that was there in the New South Wales branch of the Labor Party last week. Now we've got this show of hatred and contempt amongst Labor MPs in these text messages, including, it seems, a desire to have seen Dan Andrews defeated and removed from office by a federal Labor MP. This is for Anthony Albanese to come out and answer on these questions as to how on earth it's gotten this bad, what he knows, and what can really clean this up right across the party, including within his federal wing.
Your own party hasn't been short of it, though, over the years yourself, you've got to admit. So,
well, I don't think we've seen anything of this scale or nature. Look, there are always those who want to engage in branch stacking activities or the like. It's how you make sure that you stamp that out, don't show tolerance for it. And what we've seen here is something of a whole different scale and level in terms of secret recordings, messages of hatred, and of course people having their membership forms corruptly signed and paid for by other people. It's quite remarkable.
We'll be putting all those allegations to members of the Labor Party later. So, Minister, thank you.
Thank you, my pleasure.